Okay, today I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about basically what has MEF done in 2019, but more importantly, where are we going in 2020? So with that, as you know, digital transformation is the key driver, and it's really driving our industry. And so that's kind of why, and the impetus of why we're doing what we're doing. I don't need to spend a lot of energy on that. MEF has been uniquely focused as a forum, and you've heard this from a number of speakers, especially Nan and others. We are probably one of the few, and only forum maybe even, that's really about making our members deliver revenue-generated services. Now this is really, really critical because we feel that's really the essence of what our mission should be, and we're doing this through certification and standardization and certification. And really we're about assured services. That means performance on the services are working right, and it's secure. That's really important. And then finally, we want these services to be automated. So this is really, really critical between providers and within your own provider autonomy. Our 3.0 framework was launched, I think, 2 years ago at MEF 17. And it encompasses these 4 areas: services, APIs, certification, community. We've done a tremendous amount of work and really got to applaud the membership and all the contributors from the members and the staff that augmented all of this. And I cannot say how great and an honor to be part of this organization of MEF. And I'm going to cover just briefly the progress report to show that we're executing. We really, last year I talked about our strategy and how the board approved a strategy to execute faster and to deliver on this idea of revenue-generate services. SD-WAN, as you know, I'll cover in detail, and security of SD-WAN is awesome. The industry's buzzing about what SD-WAN can do, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We also deliver, that people don't know, IP services. Now, this is IP services that have been around for decades, but we've described it in the same language we've done carry Ethernet, so that we can automate IP, and you'll see use cases of that. At optical, layer 1 optical was done also, so a tremendous amount of work from our membership. And the optical layer 1, again, for automating, orchestrating, you have to define the services. So that's really critical. We've spent a tremendous amount of energy on our framework for LSO. This includes modeling, and I won't get into the details of it, but taking these specifications and describing them in a model, an object model, so that computer, basically computer science, people can look at that objectively versus looking at, the English vocabulary, but look at it from a computer object model and see how the services are composed. So that modeling exercise is well underway. We launched our MEF core model. It's really powerful. We're doing the MEF service common models, resource models, product models. All this will play into our Sonata APIs and our Legato, Presto APIs, and soon to be, hopefully, Cantata APIs. We delivered this not just in paper, but with an SDK. So I'm proud to announce that we just released SDK 4 for Sonata, and we already have SDK 3 for Presto and Legato. And the other thing I'll talk about is certification. A lot of great stuff has happened in certification, very important to validate that our specs works. And then finally, the community. We really want a whole new constituent types of people involved in MEF, and I think we've achieved that. We've got our developer community, including support for anyone implementing these SDKs. We have a support in that community. We also have proof of concepts. You can go out to the showroom floor and see great proof of concepts, absolutely amazing on a lot of these areas. We've got this new collaboration with ONUG, so bringing the enterprises in, including with our enterprise advisory councils. We're also collaborating with 2,000 plus enterprises with ONUG to make sure we get this right and meet their requirements. So I'm really proud and happy with the progress we made. So it's incredible what we've done in a year. I spent a lot of my time visiting a lot of members worldwide, and they get the same story over and over again. I've talked to many, many analysts, talked to many of our members, service provider members, and really what we're seeing is bandwidth will continue to explode, and our carry Ethernet and our IP and our optical connectivity underlays will continually explode for demand, but the margins will keep dropping. So with the margins that keep dropping, which is a natural progression over time, we've spent a lot of energy to make sure that as the margins decline, we implement automation to manage that declining margins. And so what you're seeing is we spend a tremendous energy automating carrier Ethernet, IP services, and optical services because we believe this is very important for our members to keep their margins as healthy as possible, and automation is the path to that. So really what you're seeing in this bottom line platform of connectivity, huge growth, huge demand, continued demand, especially with edge and all the things coming in, and I'll cover that. But also the key point is that they will decline in margin, and automation is the key answer to managing that margin decline. What we are seeing, though, is a lot of our members are saying that pipeline of connectivity was a money pipeline, and really we're just optimizing that pipeline for margin. What we really want is new services to basically add to our revenue stream. And SD-WAN, I believe, and many believe, is the gateway to these new revenue opportunities of services. Now, these new revenue service opportunities are not going to come in the way of the underlying transport. They're going to come in the way of virtual services, as we all know, and we've been talking in the industry. And SD-WAN is a virtual connectivity layer that glues the underlays and the overlays. And with this, we believe that SD-WAN is the gateway to these new kind of revenue opportunities. We see, and I'll cover this in detail, new revenue opportunities in security, in cloud, and new other digital services, including IoT and all the other things we've heard about, including AI, ML, and so on. So this is very important that we want to add new revenue opportunity, new revenue streams to our memberships, investments up their high-speed transports, which is very powerful. All of this has to be orchestrated between the underlays, the overlays, and all these new digital services on top. So I'm going to go through a great little animation of that in my 2020 vision, and we'll talk about that in more detail. So SD-WAN, it's being talked about everywhere. It is the latest buzz, craze. Everybody's on SD-WAN bandwagon, and rightfully so. It has some great value points. And what we've done in MEF is we've become the first industry SDO to define SD-WAN services. And I think this is very important because it allows what we did with carrier Ethernet is to be able to define a language, the constructs, the vocabulary that everybody can get and rendezvous around. And when a subscriber buys it, they know what they're getting. And when two operators connect, they know how to connect. And we did this with carrier Ethernet, and that created an $80 billion market. We've removed confusion. That's really critical. The second thing is, through this service, we now describe the attributes and policies that we can automate with our API. So this is very important because APIs have to convey information, and then information has to come from somewhere, and that's our SD-WAN spec. And then finally, it paves the way for certification. And you'll see we have both professional certification and product and services certification for SD-WAN. We also see that craze that SD-WAN is the gateway for security. How security is top of mind of every CIO, CISO, CEO, IT shop. The bad guys can set up shop anywhere in the world that the legal enforcement can't get to. They can go to the dark web, get all the tooling they need, build the business on cybercrime, and launch it while they're sleeping and make tons and tons of money. Trillions and trillions of dollars are going to be lost through cybercrime. And businesses, small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses, don't know how to manage this. It's almost to the point it's epidemic. And you can read anywhere, it's a big problem. It's a huge opportunity for our membership to deliver managed security offerings. And I believe SD-WAN is the way to deliver that. With the virtualization of SD-WAN and the virtualization of security functions, it's very powerful. So we've started the work of security for SD-WAN in January of 2019. Sometime next year, I'll say early to mid next year, we'll have the first version, industry version for security for SD-WAN. And what we're talking about is the ability to secure all the points. And we're talking about, securing from malware, securing at the edge, from, sorry, I don't have my glasses here, so I'll turn around. Protect from data loss. Protect, at the edges here from access control, so be able to have access control. This is very important for zero trust. Protect from botnets, from IoT environments. Protect from the clouds itself. If you're running IS Cloud, you have to put a CASB in, and you have to protect yourself because, IS Clouds are not going to give you that protection. It's up to the enterprise to do that themselves. And then finally, protect from spam and malware and links and the emails and so on. And then finally, protect from the internet, from unwarranted content, web links, and so on. It's amazing how smart the bad guys are. They are so smart, it's amazing that there's things kind of like drive-by attacks by loading in JSON scripts. And in fact, the servers that you visit today, the ones you trust that are legitimate, are also infected because they don't apply the right security postures in front of it. And they have JavaScripts that get downloaded, and you're in your browser, and it's automatically scanning for vulnerabilities, and it's automatically loading in through the vulnerabilities. And you're not doing nothing but just visit a trusted website. This is the kind of stuff that's happening. Well-known attacks all over the place. And so this security is a huge opportunity. The second thing we've done is we've modeled our SD-WAN spec, and we're now providing LSO APIs down so that as a managed service offering, most of our members are saying they're deploying one or more, and usually more, SD-WAN vendors, and they have to implement that, integrate that into their business systems, their orchestration systems, giving a single portal experience with all the other services, including SD-WAN. And how do they do that? They either have to do that by their integration themselves, which can cost millions, or they want an open standard of APIs into this area. So we're working on this through our modeling efforts of taking the spec, modeling it, and we're delivering this through Presto and Legato APIs. And I won't get into what that means, but it means that they can automate and plug into their operational business systems and basically plug in multiple vendors and just work and have to not do the integration. The other thing that's really, really hot is the complexity for an enterprise to have to go and configure all of this. They literally have to become very, very savvy in security and networking and all this stuff. And really what you want is to make it very easy to do this. So while you certainly have a network engineer that could do this at some enterprise, but if you go to the small, medium businesses, SMBs, the medium enterprises, and so on, even the large enterprises, they want the ability to have an intent model where they can express their intentions in a way that talks about business outcomes and then basically allows something of an intent module to parse that intention. And it's not that easy because a computer has to understand what you're trying to say and then translate that into lower level technical policies that the business application can understand and then invoke that into the orchestration system and below and make that happen. So thanks to, we have this active project, and thanks to John Strassner, who's been leading this project, who's an expert in this area. He's actually got code in a domain-specific language to parse this and give an idea of a restricted natural language that different constituent types can speak, can parse it down, and come back with a single set of technical policies that the business systems applications can understand. On the right here, as you see in the LSO, and then that further goes down in the orchestration through Legato. So let me give you an example of what this means. For IBM, intent-based networking, you basically have to define a policy, an intent policy, and you rely now on AI and a closed-loop machine automation system to do this. And then basically that has to translate, like I talked about, lower technical policies. You have to remove conflict from different constituent types trying to say the same thing, trying to do the same thing, and have to figure out who's going to win on that conflict. You have to translate to the final implementation. And then you have to finalize, is there conflict on the underlying layer that can't meet this objective? And then remove that conflicts, and then continue down and deploy it through the orchestration systems. collect telemetry for closed-loop automation, analyze the results. These are all machines doing this, not people. Okay, and then basically further understand, can you optimize better? And then finally recommend changes, and then that closes the loop. This is a very powerful model. Intent means that you set an intent, the machine automation, the orchestration, and the business systems, and the SDN controllers, and the manos, and all the aspects of the underlying infrastructure that makes it all happen, works together in an automated form to deliver on the intent. So the intent is abstracted through this machine automation. And that's the key point. So my call to action, if anybody's interested in joining this project, just send an email to this alias, and we'll connect you into the project. Obviously, you have to be a MEF member to join this project, or join as a MEF member if you're not already are. So we've heard a number of people talking about our SD-WAN certification. For now, we're launching this in Q1 of 2020. We already are doing some pilot trials with some service providers and vendors. This will be the first SD-WAN certification for vendors, products, and service providers. The next thing I want to talk about is service professionals. First SD-WAN kind of professional offering that is coming from us, which has a great history of delivering carrier Ethernet professionals. And again, we're launching that in December of 15, and we've already done some trials of about 200 individuals already completed the beta or the trial exams, and we're taking that information, their feedback, and maturing it better before we launch it publicly. So again, the first off SD-WAN spec, first on SD-WAN in certification, first off in SD-WAN in professional cert. So very, very happy, very proud of the organization and all the people that execute on this. So let's go in the 2020 vision. I got 7 minutes to run through this, but a lot of it's animated. We have a lot of members that have spent a tremendous decade of building in a high-speed transport network. And it really gets me frustrated when I hear, and I talk to a lot of enterprises, and to think that enterprises could just use the internet and get the same performance guarantees and the capacities and the high-speed capabilities from the internet. You just won't. And people who have taken a first approach of using the internet first for their businesses are not getting very successful. And I won't talk about the enterprise that have told me about the frustration that tried this. However, for SD-WAN, you can offload the internet non-mission critical applications and keep on mission critical applications on these high-speed managed networks. But let me tell you why this isn't so important, and then we'll use the use case of edge, which is coming in. We see that we've defined these high-speed kind of transports in our service definitions, carrier Ethernet being the most predominant one, $80 billion market, and then obviously we have IP and optical. We spend enormous energy, years now, of automating, and it's the first time you're really going to see the idea that there is now a federation of all the providers in the world that can jump in this federation and connect themselves through automated APIs and deliver multiple services. Now, today they're MEF services, but they can also extend that because this way we've done Sonata, it's extensible to other kind of services, but certainly, and other service types. It's inter-provider Sonata and Interlude, and then intra-providers Legato and Presto. And we spent a tremendous energy on this one to really make this automation happen. And then federation, we want a federated model. We don't want onesies and twosies and everybody does their own thing. We want everybody to jump in the boat, do it one way, and get automation going in a way that everybody agrees upon, and not all these different fractions of how to do it. And MEF is doing this by delivering on not only the automation, but a zero trust framework. So a project's coming in MEF this week to address zero trust. Zero trust is the buzz of how to deliver security. I'll talk about that more. And zero trust means you have to have a unique digital identity. You have to be authorized. I'll be authenticated and authorized on that, and what can you do with that? And so it's going to be built into our federated APIs and built in everything we're doing, including security for SD-WAN, will have this idea of a zero trust model. And then finally, it has to be scalable. So this is very important for the underlay. We also see that underlays have to work with overlays, because you see the hyperscalers guys doing this with their underlay fabrics in the data centers, and then running overlays with VXLANs to do all the provisioning for different tenant types. And every VXLAN and VPC and VNet are connected with these VXLANs and these NVGRE kinds of tunnels. But what we're talking about now is not in the data center. We're talking about in the wide area network. How do we do the same thing we did in data centers, which is network virtualization, uncoupling the underlay from the overlay? Now we're applying this on the wide area network. This is a powerful construct. And it'll need centralized policies, not only for performance objectives, security objectives, and adding in new kinds of services like I talked about, security, and then new digital services that use the same zero trust framework of identity, authentication, authorization, trust nothing, no machine, trust. Machines have to authenticate, people have to get applications, APIs have to authenticate, all of it about a zero trust model, and then applying that to new digital services like IoT, like AI, ML, all the stuff that we've heard and talked about in many presentations. It's not only important to have an underlay and overlay, but having intelligence of how well the overlay is using what underlay and how well the underlay is working too, and what is the capability of the underlay will dictate what overlay will take on that underlay. So for example, if I'm using broadband in an underlay and I have a down speed of 10 megabits and an up speed of 1 megabit, it might not be useful for certain types of traffic types, and it needs to be known so that the overlay doesn't use that underlay and use something else. So underlay and overlay have to be collaborated, have to be coordinated, and we're doing that in our work in the next version of SD-WAN and in the automation APIs. And all of this is all about certification. So the underlays and overlay models is to deliver on certification. To make certification, ensure that all the things we're doing in our specifications and our SDKs work, and certification allows our members to implement this and have confidence that this is going to work in their environments. Now, let me talk about the edge. The edge is a very interesting thing. We know clouds have to go to distributed, have to be distributed. And the reason is it's all about latency. Latency is the new game in digital services. So not only that, our members have a huge asset called their real estate at the edges. And for low latency, it means the user, the device, the application, the closer they are to the service, the better they're going to get that experience for the new emerging digital applications, including security for SD-WAN. So what we're talking about is as our members deploy compute into their edges and to their edges, not only their network edge, but into their building edges that they own, closets in, there has to be a way of connecting this together. So while they build their innovation platforms and digital services and create their ecosystem partners, part of that partnership will be clouds and OTT clouds. And what we're talking about is the work we're currently doing right now in Ethernet, they're going to have to access their cloud on the right regional level to their clouds of the edges. And these edges represent not, regional, like, onesies or tens or 50. We're talking every service provider can literally deliver to a cloud guy, an OTT partner, thousands and thousands of edge points. Now, how are they going to be able to get from that cloud, regional cloud, to the edge point in any automated way? So using Sonata and carry Ethernet on the underlay, they can connect in their service provider partner and basically use Sonata Ethernet and access that edge, load in their bits, and they have that high-speed underlay pipe. And not only can they do that and provision it and pre-order it and order it, but they can also adjust the bandwidth, and applications of the cloud can adjust the bandwidth needs they need from the underlay on demand dynamically. They can also get service OEM data of how well it's running for that underlay, because we're talking about two clouds, and clouds in the region talking thousands of their distributed clouds all over the edges, And they need to know how well that underlay is performing to make sure the bits are running right. And then you also have that we have service activation testing and so on. So this, all the work we're doing in Ethernet and carry Ethernet automation Sonata can be applied to these ecosystem of OTT cloud providers, guys. Additionally, at the edges of these network edges, we see these SD-WAN become a very powerful story. Right here, we're looking now to extend Sonata so that we can actually automate the broadband loop, IP broadband loop, which is ubiquitous everywhere, and even in 5G as it emerges, that now we can use Sonata to actually turn up the loop at a very, very agile way, and then have on-demand capabilities of changing that. So just like we do with Carrier Ethernet, we can apply this to underlying technologies and have overlays of SD-WAN use that. So very powerful. All the work we're currently doing apply to this use case with the emerging edge. So very, very powerful idea. Then obviously, we have the idea of having overlays across the service provider, multiple edges points in buildings and all over will apply overlays on top of their underlays. And then the cloud provider, will also provide overlays across, on their own over their underlays that they've partnered with the service providers. So this is the edge story we think is going to be very important. Using all our work, not much changes except what I talked about the Sonata for the access side can be used right away for the edge. So I think this is a very powerful story. In 5G is huge. It represents a really great transformation in the wireless world. The first thing we see is applying MEF 3.0 services on top of 5G. And what 5G meant for the business is fixed wireless access. The shortage of fiber laterals, even though it's down the road, across the street, getting into the building is very expensive. 5G allows us to do that, use fixed wireless access because it has high-speed capabilities of gigabit per second and more eventually, and it has performance guarantees. So that's very powerful. The next thing we see is the idea that a fixed operator can use a wireless operator and using Sonata provision a 5G loop, like I talked about, and turning that up and making that ecosystem run end-to-end, just like we see with Ethernet from retail wholesale. We can do that now, turning up a 5G access loop to run SD-WAN on top of it. Additionally, we're defining today slices. Slice is a very powerful idea that it's not a 5G slice, it's an end-to-end slice. And that slice represents a bunch of performance characteristics, and it can represent some security characteristics. And this is very powerful. And what this means is that we can map SD-WAN services onto these slices, and they run end-to-end in the core, in the RAN, in the partners network, and you get an end-to-end experience on what that slice definition and objective should do. So very, very powerful idea, and that's work happening right now in our orchestration group in slicing. And then finally, we're applying the same thing we did with backhaul for classless service Ethernet. We're applying in the front haul. And so I won't get into the details of that, but it's a very powerful stuff that we've had a lot of success in the backhaul. We're applying to the front haul. The last thing I'd like to say, ending here, is basically there's a lot of cloud opportunities. Ross Ortega from Azure talked about how the cloud complexities are so enormous from the subscriber that they need service providers to provide and help with the enterprise to this cloud complexities. Any enterprise that has to talk to a cloud has to think about all the regions, putting up gateways, routers, firewalls. This is in the actual cloud provider's network. Someone has to do that, has to integrate with the portals, and really they're counting on service providers. Another way of revenue opportunity. So in summary, what we're talking about is getting and realizing the impediments of a declining margins of that underlying transport by helping by automation. We're talking about new opportunities, security, also driven by the cloud, network edge, and then managing the actual cloud networks and bringing a better together story. And then finally, all of this is enabled through MEF 3.0 framework for underlay, overlay, strategy, and how to apply all of this in all the definitions and use cases I talked about. So with that, I thank you.